Yes, hello, good evening. You are listening to the Women in Music show. And now it is time to meet this week's Woman of the Week. And this week it is singer-songwriter Anita Gabrielle. Anita has been in the music industry since around the 70s and the 80s. And she was in bands in the 80s. And most recently, she's brought out a folk/acoustic sounding EP called Just Neat, in aid of Parkinson's UK. Now, we sat down on Zoom to talk about her incredible career in music and being a proud lesbian feminist and activist for LGBT rights and Black Lives Matter. And she told me that music has really been helping her get through some tough times recently. But she hasn't just been singing to the music, she's actually been dancing too.
I think it's been really important to keep moving because the energy around feels so stagnant. So when I put on some tracks, I get up and dance a lot. So I've been listening to a lot of music.
What's your go-to track to dance to?
Oh, well, it's Tilted, actually. Yeah, which is kind of a little bit, it's not the fastest track, but it is one that I love. And some older stuff, some older disco classics that I used to like, but I am listening to a lot of Christine and the Queens, and I know you're quite keen on that. So
I feel like you've just gone up in 10 million% in my expectations.
Oh, right, there we go.
So what part did music play in your life growing up?
Oh no, it was really important. I was really blessed. My mother was an extremely middle class, well-heeled Belgian woman who came over at the end of the war with my dad to this very working class background. So my background was very mixed. But my mother was an opera goer, a ballet lover, and a music lover. And she took me to classical concerts from the age of 5. So I listened to a lot of music, and I'm so grateful to my mum for that, really. And my brother, who was 6 years older than me, played the piano and got me into so much music himself. And he started with classical music, but then had an eclectic mixture from Stockhausen and Debussy right through to the Beatles, the Beatles were coming out at that time with Sgt. Pepper. And of course, my beloved Joni Mitchell. So through my brother, I was introduced to a lot of music, and through my mum.
And what kind of music are you into now? Is there anything that you just can't get enough of at the moment?
Do you know, I'm really, really exploring quite a lot of Billie Eilish at the moment. I really like her stance. I like her darkness. So, yeah, I'm listening to a fair bit of Billie Eilish. I also like First Aid Kit and Larkin Poe. I don't know if you know much of Larkin Poe. Two women rocker. They really are great rock band from an American band. And they're doing some great videos, actually, on Facebook. Just the two of them. One plays lead guitar, and they're sisters, and the other plays really, really great slide guitar. So Larkin Poe, I'm very taken. And I'm actually trying to cover a few of their songs at the moment too.
So let's talk about Joni Mitchell, because you described her as your beloved. What is it about Joni Mitchell and this song that you've chosen to play as your favourite Woman in Music song? What is it about it that you love? Well,
I think when you're growing up, the music you hear when you're growing up is absolutely key to the way I think your musical taste develops. And I've mentioned, that I listen to a lot of classical music, and I was very influenced by classical music. But at the time, what amazes me and what's so extraordinary about Joni Mitchell's music is that she came and brought so much that was new, for me anyway, to guitar playing. And this was because she was using and invented hundreds of open tunings. And at that time, this was her first album, everybody I heard was playing standard tunings and playing CGs, Joan Baez, which it was all nice stuff. But then this woman came along playing guitar like I'd never heard it. And it was orchestral. In my head, I could hear, with Joni Mitchell's guitar playing, an orchestra. And The Dawn Treader, which is the track I've chosen, it was just so romantic. I was 14 years old. It was full of romance and love and this most extraordinary voice and the most incredible guitar playing. And she went on, to develop even more tunings and guitar. But this song will always be special because of the time in my life. I was so young, and I thought, I've just never heard anything quite like this.
That was The Dawn Treader by Joni Mitchell, Anita Gabrielle's favourite woman in music. And Anita Gabrielle is this week's Woman of the Week. Anita's career took off when she was in a band in the early 80s called The Crew. And then she was in a band in the kind of like mid to late 80s called Zinana. Anita played really big venues with these bands, and I wanted to ask her what being in the music industry in a time like the 80s was like. And just a quick warning, this part of the interview does discuss and reference homophobia.
Well, I think it was an exciting time in music, and an exciting time for women, because I think bands like the Slits and Delta 5, I really liked a band called Delta 5, were showing that women could play rock guitars. We didn't have to, much as I love Joni, it was the iconic folk singer with the long hair and the guitar and being moody and deep, whereas the Slits came along and were just, we're here. And that was really exciting to me. And I so wanted to play in a band, and I so wanted to play an electric guitar. And at that point, I just thought, they inspired me. I thought, yeah, we can do this. And so I went and got a white Fender Telecaster and got an amp. And my partner at the time got a bass. We hadn't played before. But within months, we'd got stuff together. Within months, we'd just gone from being playing local pubs to winning the Melody Maker annual rock competition in 1980. And that was just beyond what I thought would happen. So there we were. The judges were people like Annie Lennox and Pauline Black of Selecter, Bill Nelson, who I deeply admired, Roger Glover of Rainbow. All these really major artists were the judges that night. And there we were drinking champagne with them at the end of the show. And it was like, oh, my goodness, this is just unbelievable. So almost overnight, it was like we just, like a meteor, took off and flew.
I love that. And I must pronounce it right, the band Zinana. Is it Zinana or Zinana? Sorry, I can't remember.
Well, in fact, a Zinana is a place in a house, I think it's a Hindu house, certainly an Asian household, where the women go. So I chose that name for the band deliberately because it was the place for the women to go. But the idea, again, 10 years before the Spice Girls, was we took three characters, strong women characters, and we did disco music that I wrote with my beloved brother, Michael, and we had a synthesizer set up. So we were making club music, and we played in lots of clubs and did the Hippodrome up in London. I've turned up at the Hippodrome in London in a Rolls Royce, and we played clubs like the Beetroot and Dingwalls and clubs like that. The Point in Milton Keynes was another really good home for us. We did quite a lot of gigs there. And we're around at the time with Stock Aitken and Waterman. We knew Mel and Kim very well, who did their first single Showing Out, and we knew them pretty well. I was very proud of that because it was, again, trying to create something that was for women, that was about women being powerful. And the song we wrote, Time Waits for No One, we were on a local TV show singing that. And quite honestly, there were a couple of men who did not like it. They did not like the image. They felt very uncomfortable around us because we were being powerful. And I don't think it went down very well with some people.
Throughout all of the success that you had, did you ever feel like you were being treated differently because of your sexuality or because you were a woman?
Oh, yes, I think so. One of the things that happened with the Crew was that Chris and I, the bass player and I, were outed by a local paper. And funny enough, I've been thinking about it. I suppose since I've been since I've had this new EP out and been revisiting my career, I've been thinking about some of the things that happened. And I can remember the phone call because it was at the time when we just won this Melody Maker competition. The phone rang and it was a journalist wanting to talk to us and said, I hear the two of you are lesbians. And he said, is the whole band homosexual? And I didn't know about our drummer. George, I knew the guitarist was straight. So I can remember saying, I said, yes, Christine and I are lesbians, but George is not homosexual. And feeling, that I was protecting George in a way from that. And that just shows that kind of internalized homophobia, because I could not feel proud or even think, well, George might be gay. I couldn't say it. And it was just awful when I look back now. It was a very difficult situation to be in. It was hard, and we had things happen. We had a brick through our window. We had our tires were slashed on our car, and eggs thrown at us. There was a lot of things that happened, which I look back now and I think, my God, that happened. It's just unbelievable, really.
I'm actually going to move on to a song we're going to play now. I Want to Go Outside Again. Before we play it, can you kind of tell the story behind the song?
Yes, I started writing it probably, just after the first lockdown lockdown was coming to an end, and I thought, I've had enough of this. I'm not really dreaming that a year later we would still be in lockdown. And I was missing. It began as a song of missing my friends and missing doing ordinary things, and then I started to think about how are we going to get through this? How are we going to come out? And then it became much more like all the things that we need in order to come through this. And then it became much more about how I wanted the world to be a different place, and what I thought was important about the NHS workers actually getting properly paid, and about shop workers and people who are driving trucks being recognised for all they do. So it starts off kind of as a song about just wanting to go outside again, and then it becomes a bit of a rant, really.
That was I Want to Go Outside Again by Anita Gabrielle, this week's Woman of the Week. And I actually call that a bopical. You know why? It's because it's a topical bop. It's wonderful, and that's taken off her EP called Just Neat. And as you will have heard in the lyrics in that song, Anita is so passionate about raising awareness for issues and the politics that she believes in. And in this final part of the interview, as well as chatting about her new EP, Just Neat, we chat about why she finds campaigning so worthwhile, and all about a very historical event in the LGBT calendar that she witnessed.
Well, I think songs have always just been a mode of expression for me. It started out when I started songwriting. I just wanted to find my voice, really. I wanted to find a voice. And then as I went along, the songs became things that really matter to me. Not all of them. I mean, I do write some fairly fluffy ones at times, but every now and again something comes along. And I've always been I've always been a very proud lesbian feminist. And I do feel that the personal is political. That's a saying that came at me when I was very young. The personal is political. How you live your life is a political statement. Yeah, it just is who I am. And suddenly, certainly with this song, I Want to Go Outside Again, it just took off. It was just, we'll choose leaders worldwide with integrity, not place thieves and robbers at the top of the tree. And we'll find a way to put right what's wrong, to make sense of all this struggle for everyone who's gone.
But it's something you've been doing pretty much all your life. Like, I read that you marched in the 70s and the 80s for various things.
Oh yeah. Very, very early on, I was out on all kinds of marches. I did a Wages for Housework march. That was fun, and I've always been inspired by the suffragettes. I mean, they made things happen. They brought about change, and they were pioneers. And I've just always felt, if things aren't just and things aren't right, these things need tackling. Funnily enough, the very first time I went out after lockdown was to go to my local Black Lives Matter demonstration in our local park, because I just thought it's really important to stand up and say what side you stand on, really. So yeah, it's always been part of me. I suppose it always will.
And we did talk about this on the radio for Christmas, but you ended up in the House of Lords once and you saw a very historical moment.
Oh yes, I did. Yes, it was the Clause 28 campaign campaigns. People who don't know, Clause 28 was the anti-gay legislation in the 80s brought in by the beloved Margaret Thatcher. And yes, I went down to London to the House of Lords when Clause 28 was being debated, and sat through the debate. Most depressing experience of my life, really, hearing all these myths about gay people. Oh, it was just awful. And then suddenly, just in front, as the debate finished, 4 women just in front of me just leapt over the top. They had ropes. I mean, how did they get those in? In those days, they didn't. They had ropes, and they tied them to the top of the rails and just abseiled over the top, shouting, "Lesbians are angry. We're angry. We're angry," and just was swinging over the heads of all these lords, looking up in total disbelief at what was happening. It was spectacular. And, you know, when you feel really powerless and you think this is all so wrong, and someone does something like that, it just lifts you. And those women, whoever they were, I've always felt such gratitude towards. They were just really, really did. And I'm pleased to say I was down at the House of Commons 2 years ago, campaigning for the Women Against State Pension Inequality, WASPI, of which I'm a member of that. We got asked to leave there as well. So, and that was just 2 years ago. So I'm very pleased to have been chucked out of the House of Lords and the House of Commons in my life.
Oh, yeah, that is such an achievement. I'm so proud. Oh, my goodness. I want that to go on my CV as well, you know.
Well, you've got lots of time, Lydia. There's lots of things that I'm sure you'll be down there.
Moving kind of weirdly on in a weird segue, I want to talk about your EP that you brought out last year, at the end of last year, the Just Neat EP, and it's for Parkinson's UK, isn't it?
My influential brother was diagnosed with Parkinson's just over a year ago now. Again, it was wanting to make something good out of something that was difficult. I thought I'd like to do something with my music and perhaps use it to maybe raise some money for Parkinson's UK, and that's what I've been doing these last few months. And and people are rightly focused on the pandemic, but there are still people every day who are being affected by Parkinson's. They'll still be being diagnosed. It's a difficult disease, and Parkinson's UK do such a great job in assisting people to manage their diagnosis and put up support and give it great information, all the things that they do. And I thought, I wonder if I can help them. So that's what I've been doing. I set up a Just Giving page, which is still there if people want to donate.
Do you know how much you've raised so far from the EP and the Just Giving page? My
Just Giving page is just coming up to £1,250, and I've taken about £500 in sales separate from that as well. So, you know, coming up from about £1,800. You know, as I say, it's not in Colonel Tom's league, but when I set out, I only aimed for about £500. Well, it started at £250 and then £500, and it's gone up and up. So I'm really delighted. It's just made me feel I'm doing something worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm sure it must feel like that. It's really great. I mean, even in nowadays when people don't really buy a lot of physical music, like a lot of like physical CDs, and you're still managing to
shift a few. Yeah, I mean, obviously the EP is downloadable, but of course the money that you make from downloads and streaming music is just minuscule, really.
Yeah, the song we're going to play to finish is Dance Through Life. This is my favourite one from your EP because again, it's a bop. Like I feel like it's one I can dance to. So can you tell me about that Dance Through Life before we play it?
I wanted something that was really full of optimism, but also reflected where I am now. There's a line in it that says, "The wisdom of aging is to not waste time, to savour every breath you take like a vintage wine." And I think that's it. You know, every breath we take is so important. And sometimes, especially when I look back to myself as a younger woman, I worried so much about stuff. And it's hard not to worry at the moment about all that's going on. But worrying never achieves anything. And I think that it's a waste of energy. So we need to dance through life. We need to, you know, get our bodies moving and find our way through it. And so it is dance through life, sing all my days, raise a glass to the stars and drink good health.
Oh, I love that. Before we play it, can you introduce your song in true radio style?
Well, here we have Anita Gabrielle from her EP Just Neat, which is raising funds for Parkinson's UK. We have Dance Through Life.
I That's got a proper like first aid kit vibe to it, hasn't it? That's called Dance Through Life by Anita Gabrielle, taken off her new EP Just Neat, which is raising money for Parkinson's UK. And Anita Gabrielle was this week's Woman of the Week. What a fascinating lady. You can actually find that EP Just Neat on all streaming platforms, or you can order a hard copy CD from Anita directly by emailing her on lawntreader@gmail.com. Thanks so much to Anita for her time. She was just amazing to chat to, and I'm so glad we had that half an hour just to explore her life and explore what life was like in the 80s for her as a proud lesbian woman. So yeah, great chat. Anyway, now